August 3, 1977, New York City, 10:47 p.m. Charles Bronson was walking back to his hotel after dinner when he heard the scream, a woman's voice, terrified, cutting through the humid summer night. "Help! Somebody help me!" Most people would have looked the other way. This was New York in the 70s, when the crime rate was at an all-time high, when getting involved could get you killed. But Charles Bronson was not most people, and what he did in the next 4 minutes would make headlines around the world, with one question everyone wanted answered. Did Death Wish just become real? This is the untold story of the night Charles Bronson stopped being an actor and became the vigilante hero everyone thought he only played on screen. The night that changed how America saw him forever. To understand what happened on that August night, you need to understand what New York City was like. It was not the cleaned-up, gentrified metropolis it is today. It was a war zone. The city was bankrupt, police were understaffed, and crime was everywhere. Muggings happened in broad daylight. Subway cars were rolling crime scenes. Times Square was a haven for drugs and prostitution. And just 3 years earlier, Charles Bronson had released Death Wish, a film about a mild-mannered architect who becomes a vigilante after his wife is murdered and his daughter is assaulted. The movie was controversial, criticized by some as glorifying violence, praised by others as a cathartic fantasy for a society tired of feeling powerless against crime. The film made Charles Bronson a different kind of star. He was no longer just an actor. He became a symbol. To some, he represented everything wrong with America's obsession with guns and revenge. To others, he was a hero, the only one willing to do what the system could not, protect innocent people. Charles hated the controversy. He would give interviews trying to explain that the film was fiction, that he did not advocate for vigilante justice in real life, but the public did not care. To them, Charles Bronson was Paul Kersey. The line between the actor and the character had blurred beyond recognition. August 3, 1977, Charles was in New York for meetings about a potential film project. He was staying at the Plaza Hotel, one of the most prestigious hotels in Manhattan. He would go out for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant in Midtown, enjoying a rare evening of anonymity. Despite his fame, Charles could sometimes move through New York unrecognized. He had one of those faces that people knew but could not quite place when he was not on a movie screen. Dinner had been good, simple pasta, a glass of red wine, time to think. Charles paid the bill around 10:30 p.m. and decided to walk back to his hotel. It was only about 8 blocks, and despite the city's reputation, Charles was not afraid. He had grown up in poverty, survived World War II, worked construction in the most dangerous conditions. Street crime did not intimidate him. He walked north on 6th Avenue, hands in his pockets, collar turned up against the evening breeze. The streets were still busy. Tourists, theater-goers, workers heading home. Charles passed by without anyone giving him a second glance. But as he turned onto a side street, a shortcut that would take him closer to the plaza, the atmosphere changed. The crowds thinned. The street lighting was poor. Several bulbs broken or burned out. Trash lined the sidewalks. A few homeless people slept in doorways. Charles was about halfway down the block when he heard it. A woman's scream, sharp and terrified, coming from an alley about 50 feet ahead. "Help! Somebody help me!" Charles stopped. He could see into the alley mouth from where he stood. The dim light cast by a distant street lamp, he could make out 3 figures, 2 men and a woman. One man had grabbed the woman's purse and was trying to yank it away from her. The other was attempting to push her against the alley wall. The woman was fighting back, screaming, refusing to let go of her purse, but she was clearly losing the struggle. Charles looked around. The few other people on the street were walking quickly away, heads down, pretending they had not heard anything. Nobody was calling for help. Nobody was intervening. This was the moment. The moment where Charles Bronson had to decide who he was. Was he the actor who played heroes, or was he actually willing to be one? He started walking towards the alley. As he got closer, he could hear the muggers now, their voices, aggressive, threatening. "Let go of the fucking purse, lady. Give it up or we will hurt you." The woman was crying, still fighting. "Please, oh, it is all I have. Please." Charles reached the alley entrance. He was 55 years old, not young, not particularly large at 5'9", and 180 pounds. He was not carrying a weapon. He was just a middle-aged man in a dark jacket and slacks, but he had something else. He had a lifetime of toughness. He had a face that had intimidated criminals on screen for years, and he had absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. "Let her go," Charles said. His voice was calm, controlled, but carrying that distinct gravelly tone that millions of moviegoers would have recognized instantly. The three people in the alley froze. The muggers turned to look at who had been stupid enough to interrupt them. One of them, a thin man in his 20s with wild eyes, probably high on something, laughed. "Walk away, old man. This is not your business. I am making it my business," Charles said, taking a step into the alley. "Let her go. Take your hands off her. Walk away." The second mugger, thicker and meaner looking, released the woman and turned fully toward Charles. "You got a death wish or something, Pops." The irony of that statement would not be lost on Charles later. "I have got a problem with cowards who attack women," Charles replied. "Now you can leave, or this gets ugly." The bigger mugger pulled something from his pocket. A knife. Not a big one, maybe a 4-inch blade, but in the dim alley light, it caught what illumination there was, and glinted menacingly. "How about you get ugly, old man? How about I cut you up and leave you bleeding in this alley?" The woman, seeing an opportunity, tried to run. But the first mugger still had her purse and yanked her back. She screamed again. Charles assessed the situation in an instant. 2 attackers, 1 armed, 1 victim, terrified but fighting. No help coming, no police, just him. He had been in situations like this before, not in movies, but in real life. Bar fights when he was young and broke and angry, confrontations on construction sites. The war where hesitation got you killed. He knew how this worked. The knife was scary, but knife fighters rarely knew what they were doing. They waved the weapon around, trying to intimidate, leaving themselves open. Charles took another step forward. "Last chance. Put down the knife. Let her go. Leave. Fuck you." The bigger mugger lunged forward, knife extended, trying to slash across Charles's chest. Charles reacted with a speed that surprised everyone, including himself. He sidestepped the knife, grabbed the mugger's extended arm with both hands, and using the man's own momentum, drove him face first into the brick wall of the alley. There was a sickening crunch as the mugger's nose broke against the brick. The knife clattered to the ground. The mugger dropped, dazed, blood pouring from his shattered nose. The second mugger, the thin one, stared in shock. This was not how muggings were supposed to go. Victims were supposed to be scared, helpless. They were not supposed to fight back. And they definitely were not supposed to win. "You crazy motherfucker," the thin mugger shouted, but there was fear in his voice now. Charles picked up the knife from where it had fallen. He did not point it at anyone. He just held it, making it clear that the balance of power had shifted. "You are going to let go of that woman's purse," Charles said, his voice still calm, still controlled. "You are going to help your friend here, and you are both going to walk out of this alley. If I ever see either of you on these streets again, if I ever hear about you attacking another woman, I will find you, and next time, I will not be this gentle. Do we understand each other?" The thin mugger looked at his friend, who was groaning on the ground, clutching his broken nose. He looked at Charles, standing there with the knife, looking like exactly what he was, a man who had seen real violence and was not afraid of it. "Yeah," the thin mugger said quietly. "We understand." He released the woman's purse. She immediately grabbed it and ran toward Charles, positioning herself behind him. The thin mugger helped his friend to his feet. Together they stumbled out of the alley, the bigger one still bleeding heavily, both of them moving as fast as they could in the opposite direction from Charles. Charles watched them go. Then he dropped the knife in a nearby trash can and turned to the woman. She was in her early 30s, dressed like she would been working late at an office. Her clothes were disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying, but she appeared physically unharmed. "Are you okay?" Charles asked. She nodded, still shaking. "I think so. Thank you." "Oh my God, thank you. If you had not—" Her voice broke. "Do you live near here?" "A few blocks away. I was walking home from work. I am a paralegal. I was working late, and I thought it would be safe enough, but it is not your fault," Charles said firmly. "None of this is your fault. But you should not walk alone at night. Not in this city. Not right now. I know that now." She was trying to compose herself, wiping her eyes. "I do not even know your name. I want to thank you properly. You saved me. You actually saved my life." Charles hesitated. He did not want recognition. He would done what needed to be done, nothing more. But he could see she needed this, needed to know who had helped her. "My name is Charles." She extended her hand. "I am Linda Martinez. Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much." They shook hands. Charles could feel her trembling. "Come on," he said. "I will walk you home. Make sure you get there safely." "You do not have to do that." "Yes, I do." They walked together out of the alley and back onto the street. As they did, Charles noticed something. Several people were standing around at a distance, watching. They would heard the commotion. They would seen the muggers run away, and now they were looking at Charles, recognition slowly dawning on some of their faces. One man, probably in his 50s, stepped forward. "Holy shit! You are Charles Bronson." Charles did not respond. He just kept walking, keeping Linda close, but the man followed. "It is you! You are Charles Bronson. Did you just stop a mugging?" Did that really just happen? Others began to gather. In New York, even at 11 p.m., a celebrity sighting drew a crowd, and a celebrity sighting involving a real-life crime, that was irresistible. "Bronson, Mr. Bronson, did you really fight those guys? Is this for a movie? Are there cameras? Death Wish is real." Charles kept walking, his hand protectively on Linda's shoulder, guiding her through the growing crowd. He did not speak to them, did not acknowledge them. He just focused on getting Linda home safely. But someone had already called the police. By the time Charles and Linda reached her apartment building 3 blocks away, 2 NYPD patrol cars were pulling up, lights flashing. The officers got out, hands on their weapons, not sure what they were responding to. Calls had come in about a fight in an alley, about Charles Bronson, about a mugging stopped by a celebrity. One officer, a veteran cop in his 40s, named Officer Kowalski, approached carefully. "Sir, we receive reports of an altercation. Can you tell us what happened?" Linda stepped forward. "These men saved my life. I was being mugged, and he stopped them. They had a knife, and he protected me." Officer Kowalski looked at Charles, really looked at him. Recognition flickered. "You are Charles Bronson." It was not a question. Charles nodded. "Yes. Had you stopped a mugging? 2 men were attacking this woman. I intervened. They left. That is all. Officer Kowalski's partner, a younger cop, was already smiling. This is insane. Deathwish stopped mugging. This is going to be all over the news. It does not need to be all over anything, Charles said firmly. I helped someone who needed help. That is all. Miss Martinez needs to file a report. I am willing to give a statement. But I would prefer if my involvement was not publicized. Officer Kowalski nodded, but his expression said they both knew that was not going to happen. This story was too good. The media would eat it alive. They went to the police station. Charles gave his statement. Linda gave hers. The details matched. 2 attackers, one with a knife, Charles intervening, the attackers fleeing. The police put out a description of the suspects, but nobody expected them to be caught. Muggers in New York in 1997 rarely were. By the time Charles left the police station at 2 a.m., there were reporters waiting. Someone at the station had tipped them off. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in his face. Mr. Bronson, is it true you stopped a mugging? Did you fight off 2 armed attackers? How does it feel to be a real-life vigilante? Is this life imitating art? Charles pushed through without comment, got into a cab and went back to his hotel. But the story was already out. By morning it was the front page of the New York Post. Death wish comes true. Bronson stops real muggers. The Daily News had a similar headline. By afternoon it had gone national. By the next day, international. The media frenzy was intense. Everyone wanted Charles's perspective. Did he seek out danger? Did he think he was actually Paul Kersey? Was he advocating for vigilante justice? Charles refused all interview requests. His publicist issued a brief statement. Bronson witnessed a crime in progress and intervened to protect an innocent person. He did what any decent person would do in that situation. He does not consider himself a vigilante and does not endorse vigilantism. He simply helped someone who needed help. But the narrative had already taken a life of its own. To many people, Charles Bronson had proven that the tough guy image was not just for movies. He really was that brave, that capable, that willing to put himself at risk for a stranger. To others, it was troubling. Did celebrities think they were above the law? What if someone had been seriously hurt? What if Charles had been killed? The debate raged in newspapers, on television, on radio shows. Some called him a hero, others called him reckless. Everyone had an opinion. Linda Martinez tried to speak out, to tell people that Charles had saved her life, that he was a hero regardless of what anyone thought, but her voice was lost in the noise. 3 weeks after the incident, Charles received a letter. It was from Linda. In it, she thanked him again. She told him that she would started taking self-defense classes, that she would become an advocate for street safety, that what he'd done had changed her life in more ways than just saving it. She included a photograph. It was a simple picture of her smiling, standing in front of her apartment building. On the back, she would written, "Because of you, I am still here to smile. Thank you, Charles. You will always be my hero, Linda." Charles kept that photograph. Years later, his wife Jill found it in his desk drawer. When she asked about it, Charles told her the story. Jill later wrote in her memoir that it was one of the few times she would seen Charles emotional about something he would done. He did not want to be celebrated for it, Jill wrote. He just wanted Linda to be safe. Everything else, the publicity, the debates, the headlines, he would have gladly avoided all of it, but he never regretted helping her. He told me, if I had to do it again, knowing all the chaos it would cause, I would still do it, because the alternative was letting her get hurt, and I could not live with that. The incident changed how people viewed Charles Bronson. Before, he was an action star, famous but not necessarily respected. After, he was something more. He was a man who would proven that the courage he portrayed on screen was real. that the values his characters embodied, protection of the innocent, standing up to criminals, refusing to look away from injustice, were values he actually held. In 1982, Charles filmed Death Wish 2. During promotion, a reporter asked him about the 1977 mugging incident. Do you think that experience influenced how you approached the sequel? Charles thought for a moment. No, the experience taught me that real violence is not like movie violence. It is messier, scarier, less satisfying. When I stopped those muggers, there was no soundtrack playing. There was no dramatic lighting. There was just fear and adrenaline, and the knowledge that someone might get hurt. That is not entertainment. That is reality, and reality is always more complicated than any movie can capture. But you would do it again? To protect someone? Yes, without hesitation. That is not vigilantism. That is just being human. Muggers were never caught. The police investigation went nowhere. But Linda Martinez never forgot. Every year on the 3rd, she sent Charles a card. Just a simple thank you, a reminder that she was still alive, still grateful. Charles never responded. He was not good at that sort of thing, but Jill would always show him the cards when they arrived, and he would nod and file them away with the others. When Charles died in 2003, Linda sent flowers to his funeral. The card read simply, "For the man who gave me my life back, with eternal gratitude, Linda Martinez, August 3, 1000." The story of Charles Bronson stopping a mugging has been told and retold over the years, often with exaggerations. Some versions have him fighting off 5 attackers. Others have him chasing the criminals for blocks. Some claim he was carrying a gun. It was not true. But the basic facts remain undisputed. On a summer night in New York City, Charles Bronson heard a woman screaming for help, and while everyone else walked away, he walked toward the danger. He put himself at risk to protect a stranger. And when it was over, he did not seek recognition or praise. He just made sure she got home safely. That is not a movie plot. That is not Death Wish. That is just Charles Bronson being exactly who he was, a man who would learn from the coal mines of Pennsylvania that you do not walk away when someone needs help. A man who would learn from World War II that courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite it. A man who would spend his entire life proving over and over that tough guys do not just talk, they act. Officer Kowalski, a cop who would taken Charles's statement that night, retired from the NYPD in 1995. In his retirement interview, a reporter asked if he would ever met anyone famous during his career. "I met lots of celebrities," Kowalski said. "New York is full of them, but only one ever impressed me, Charles Bronson. Night in 77, he stopped a mugging, real violence, real danger. And afterward, he did not want recognition. He just wanted to make sure the victim was okay. That told me everything I needed to know about who he really was. Do you think he was right to intervene?" The reporter asked. Given the danger, given that he was not law enforcement, Kowalski smiled. "I have been a cop for 30 years. I have responded to hundreds of muggings, assaults, violent crimes. You know what the hardest part of my job is? Showing up too late, arriving after the crime has already happened, when all we can do is take statements and file reports." Charles Bronson was there when it mattered. He did not wait for someone else to handle it. He saw someone in danger, and he acted. That is not vigilantism. That is heroism. And maybe that is the real story. Not that Charles Bronson played heroes in movies, but that when the moment came in real life, when a real person needed real help, he did not hesitate. He did not calculate the risks or worry about the publicity. He just did what needed to be done, because that is what heroes do. They show up, they act, they protect. The cameras can be rolling or not. The media can be watching or not. The recognition can come or not. It does not matter. What matters is that when you hear someone screaming for help, you do not walk away. Charles Bronson never walked away, and on August 3, 1977, Linda Martinez went home safe because of it. That is not death wish. 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 That